one has to constantly be on the alert and be critical of one's own conceptions of God. Ein Sof is an antidote to any fixed conception of God. In fact, the Kabbalists are aware of this. They say that Ein Sof is not even hinted at anywhere in the Bible or rabbinic writings. It's just that the Kabbalists found a trace of it through their own meditation and contemplation. A very radical breakthrough in Jewish theology, in Western thought, and a good example of how the Kabbalah is at the same time conservative and radical. Conservative in that it accepts the regimen of Jewish spiritual practice. Radical in the sense that it's not content with any traditional description of God. Page 26, the Essential Kabbalah. God is unified oneness, one without two, inestimable. Genuine divine existence engenders the existence of all of creation. The sublime inner essences secretly constitute a chain, linking everything from the highest to the lowest, extending from the upper pool to the edge of the universe. There is nothing, not even the tiniest thing, that is not fastened to the links of this chain. Everything is catenated in its mystery, caught in its oneness. God is one, God's secret is one, all the worlds below and above are all mysteriously one. Divine existence is indivisible. The entire chain is one, down to the last link. Everything is linked with everything else. So divine essence is below as well as above, in heaven and on earth. There is nothing else. There is a line in the Bible, God is God in heaven above and on earth beneath, Ein Od. Two Hebrew words, Ein Od, conclude the verse. They're usually translated, there is no one else, meaning there's no other God. But the mystics render these words, Ein Od, there is nothing else. There is nothing but God. How does the infinite become the manifold universe? The Kabbalists reflect on this question, and here is one answer. Page 28. There must be a contraction of God's presence. For if we believe that Ein Sof emanated the emanation and does not clothe itself within, then everything that emanated is outside of it, and it is outside of everything. Then there are two, God forbid. So we must conclude that nothing is outside of God. This applies not only to the Sefirot, but to everything that exists, large and small. They exist solely through the divine energy that flows to them and clothes itself in them. If God's gaze were withdrawn for even a moment, all existence would be nullified. This is the secret meaning of the verse in the Bible, you enliven everything. Ve'ata mechayeh et kulam in Hebrew. So divinity flows and inheres in each thing that exists. This is the secret meaning of the verse, God's presence fills the whole world. Melo chol haaretz kavodo in Hebrew. Contemplating this, you are humbled, your thoughts purified. The infinite energy contracts itself so that it can manifest in the 10,000 things of the world. But the separate appearance of reality should not blind us to the underlying oneness. I've been reading until now from material written in the Middle Ages, from the 13th to the 16th centuries. Listen now to one brief passage from a 20th century Kabbalist, a man named Abraham Isaac Cook. He talks about the relation between Kabbalah and the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution accords with the secrets of Kabbalah better than any other theory. Evolution follows the path of ascent and thus provides the world with a basis for optimism. How can one despair, seeing that everything evolves and ascends? When we penetrate the inner nature of evolution, we find divinity illuminated in perfect clarity. Ein Sof generates, actualizes potential infinity. According to this view of Rav Kook, Ein Sof gradually unfolds and becomes the world. The infinite manifests itself moment by moment, eon by eon, as the one turns into the universe. Let's turn to this chart of the 10 Sefirot. This is the main symbol system of the Kabbalah. Of course, what's not depicted here is Ein Sof itself. Ein Sof, you might say, is not simply at the top of the chart above the Sefirot. Ein Sof is the white space of the entire chart. Ein Sof is the whole cosmos. Then what are the Sefirot? The Sefirot are the ways in which Ein Sof manifests itself. You could call them aspects of the divine personality. Ein Sof is beyond gender, beyond description, but our human mind cannot relate to the infinite. And the Sefirot are the means by which we can approach the infinite. They're often pictured in the form of a tree, but if the Sefirot are a tree, then they are really an upside-down tree, because they are rooted in Ein Sof. For the moment, let's pretend that Ein Sof is above the Sefirot, even though I said in some way that's very inaccurate. But just in terms of understanding how the Sefirot emerge out of Ein Sof, we can momentarily picture Ein Sof as above the Sefirot. Therefore, Keter, the highest of the 10 Sefirot, is the root. It's often called the root of roots. It is rooted in Ein Sof, and the tree of the Sefirot branches out from that root. Ein Sof is beyond gender, and Keter too is really beyond gender, neither masculine nor feminine. It can be called the crown on the head of primordial Adam, or we might say primordial Adam and Eve. According to the Kabbalists, there is a divine original on which we are based. You remember Genesis? Let us create Adam in our image. Let us create the human in our image, God says. This is the original prototype, the original model on which we are modeled. And therefore, the Sefirot are both masculine and feminine. The entire structure is a human body, but an androgynous human body, and Keter is the crown on that body. Keter is also given the paradoxical name Ayin, nothingness. We'll talk about this more in the second lesson. Keter is nothingness in the sense that it is no thing. It's perhaps better to pronounce it no thingness. Not nothingness in the sense of a blank, but no one thing, the potentiality of all things. Out of Keter there emerges a spark of divine wisdom known as Chokhmah. Keter turns into Chokhmah. You might say the spark of light, the ray of light shines out of Keter, manifesting itself as Chokhmah, divine wisdom, also known as point or beginning. This is a point which expands into a circle, forming the next Sefirah, known as Bina, understanding, literally, but pictured as a womb or a palace. This is the first manifestation of the feminine within the Sefirot. Chokhmah is called father, Bina is the mother. This upper triad of the Sefirot really is in a class by itself. And some Kabbalists warn against even venturing into this realm. They say you should concentrate on the 7 lower sfirot and not try to climb to the top triad. But other Kabbalists are not so hesitant and encourage the ascent all the way up to Bina, or Chachma, or Keter, or even Ein Sof itself. Let's pause there for a moment. Let me read to you a passage from the Zohar, the major text of the Kabbalah, describing the emergence of the primordial point, Chokhmah, from Keter, from the highest Sphira. I warn you that this passage is very difficult to comprehend. I'm not going to go through it in detail and describe every bit of symbolism. I want to read it to you to give you a flavor of the Zohar, this text of the Kabbalah, and that I'll point out a few insights. This is an Essential Kabbalah, page 52, the creation of God. This is the Zohar's interpretation of the opening words of the Bible. As I said, the Zohar is the major text of the Kabbalah, and I should explain, people often confuse Kabbalah and Zohar. There is no book called the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is the entire philosophy of Jewish mysticism. The Zohar is a book. The Zohar is the major text of the Kabbalah, sometimes called the Bible of the Kabbalah. The Zohar is really a mystical commentary on the 5 books of Moses, going chapter by chapter, sometimes even verse by verse, showing the inner spiritual meaning of one verse or another. So this, according to the Zohar, is the mystical meaning of the very first words of the Bible, in the beginning, God created. Now I should tell you that the Hebrew really is a slightly different order. Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, created, Elohim, God. In the beginning, created God. In the beginning. When the king conceived ordaining, he engraved engravings in the luster on high. A blinding spark flashed from the concealed, within the concealed of the concealed, from the mystery of the infinite, a cluster of vapor in formlessness, set in a ring. Not white, not black, not red, not green, no color at all. When a band spanned, it yielded radiant colors. Deep within the spark gushed a flow, imbuing colors below, concealed within the concealed of the mystery of the infinite. The flow broke through and did not break through its aura. It was not known at all, until under the impact of breaking through, one high and hidden point shone. Beyond that point, nothing is known. So it is called beginning. Zohar, concealed of the concealed, struck its aura. The aura touched and did not touch this point. Then beginning emanated, building itself a glorious palace. There it sowed the seed of holiness to give birth for the benefit of the universe. Zohar sowing a seed of glory like a seed of fine purple silk. The silkworm wraps itself within, weaving itself a palace. This palace is its